A group of ruthless thugs thought they were about to make an easy score, robbing a seemingly defenseless homeless man of his last few belongings. What they didn't know: the man they targeted, and whose dog they disrespected, was none other than Keanu Reeves. He had just wrapped up a long day of filming and was waiting for his train, hoping to finally get home. But as these thugs closed in, thinking they'd found an easy victim, they had no idea they were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. Stay tuned until the end to see how this unexpected confrontation took a turn no one could have predicted. You don't want to miss this one. As the city's energy slowly faded into the night, Keanu Reeves stepped out of the film studio, breathing in the crisp New York air. Dressed in intentionally casual clothes, worn-out jeans, a loose denim jacket, and a faded baseball cap pulled low over his face, he moved through the streets unnoticed. It was exactly how he wanted it. After hours on set, the last thing he needed was attention. Beside him trotted Andy, a beagle puppy with floppy ears and soulful eyes. Andy wasn't just any dog. He had been assigned to Keanu by the film's animal trainer to help them bond before shooting key scenes for John Wick. The arrangement was temporary, but Keanu already felt something deeper than just a professional obligation. Every wag of Andy's tail, every excited sniff at the city air, it all made him smile. The two made their way toward the 14th Street Union Square subway station. As they descended the stairs, the late-night crowd grew thinner. The fluorescent lights cast sharp shadows on the concrete walls, the distant rumble of trains echoing through the tunnels. Deeper into the station, they passed an alcove where a small homeless community had settled. Makeshift shelters and tents lined the walls, a harsh contrast to the world above. Most commuters hurried past, avoiding eye contact, muttering dismissively under their breath. But Keanu? He stopped. Like he did every night after filming, he took a moment to acknowledge these people, the ones society so easily overlooked. With Andy waiting patiently at his side, Keanu moved from person to person, handing out small bills and loose change, sharing a quiet word, a moment of kindness. "Here you go," he murmured, pressing a few bills into the hands of an elderly woman wrapped in a tattered blanket. She looked up, her tired eyes widening with gratitude. "God bless you, young man," she whispered, voice cracking with emotion. Keanu nodded, moving on. He never did this for recognition. Most people didn't even realize who he was, and that was fine with him. It wasn't about being a celebrity. It was about doing what felt right. As he walked, Andy's presence brought unexpected joy to the people around them. Some reached out to pet him, their faces momentarily lighting up at the sight of the playful pup. Even in this forgotten corner of the city, Andy managed to bring a little warmth. But then, something felt off. Near the end of the alcove was a familiar spot, a small tent where Max, a homeless man Keanu had spoken with often, usually stayed. Max was always upbeat, his chihuahua, Button, never leaving his side. But tonight, silence. Keanu's steps slowed. Attention hung in the air. "Max," he called out, his voice low but firm. No response. Then, a rustling from inside the tent. The flap opened, and Max emerged. The sight made Keanu's stomach drop. A deep bruise darkened the side of Max's face, and his usually bright eyes were clouded with something heavy. Something painful. "Oh, hey, Keanu," Max muttered, trying to force a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Keanu crouched beside him, concern flickering in his gaze. "Max, what happened? Where's Button?" And that's when he realized Button was gone. And Max wasn't just hurt. He was terrified. What had happened here? And more importantly, who was responsible? What came next was something no one saw coming. Stick around, because this story is far from over. Max was usually full of chatter, always ready with a joke or a story. But tonight, he sat in silence, his usual liveliness replaced by something much heavier. Then Keanu said the one word that shattered what little composure Max had left. "Where's Button?" At the mention of his dog's name, Max's shoulders slumped. His hands covered his face, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were brimming with tears. "They took her, Keanu," he choked out. "Those bastards took my button." Keanu's expression darkened, confusion and concern flashing across his face. "Who? What happened?" Max took a shaky breath, reaching into his pocket with trembling fingers. When his hand emerged, he was holding a small, empty dog collar. The sight of it was like a fresh wound opening. "It was yesterday," Max began, his voice hollow. "Those thugs, they've been coming around for a while now, shaking us down, demanding security fees. Say they own this part of the station." He spat the words out with bitter resentment. "I never have anything to give them, but usually they just rough me up a little and move on." Keanu listened intently, his hand resting comfortingly on Max's shoulder. Andy, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, sat silently by his side. "But yesterday," Max's voice wavered. "Button, she tried to protect me." His breath hitched as he spoke. "She's always been brave, my little girl. When they started pushing me around, she started barking at them. Then, she bit one of them on the ankle." Keanu closed his eyes, already dreading where this was headed. Max's words came out in a rush now. "They went crazy. One of them kicked her, hard. She yelped, and I tried to grab her, tried to shield her, but then, his hand instinctively touched the dark bruise on his temple. One of them had a bat. I don't remember much after that. I woke up back in my tent. The others here found me and dragged me back, but," his voice cracked. Button was gone. Max stared down at the empty collar in his hands, his grip tightening around it. Keanu's jaw clenched. "I'm so sorry, Max," he said, his voice filled with genuine anguish. "Do you think, is there a chance she's still alive?" Max shook his head slowly. "I don't think so. News travels fast down here. If anyone had seen her, if she was still out there, I'd know." His voice dropped lower. "And those guys, they're not the type to show mercy." Keanu exhaled, his mind racing. "Have you gone to the police?" Max let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "The police?" He shook his head. "They're just another gang in uniform, Keanu. If you don't have money to make it worth their time, they don't care. To them, we're nothing more than a problem to sweep under the rug." The weight of Max's words settled heavy in Keanu's chest, anger at the injustice, sadness at the loss, frustration at how cruel the world could be. He glanced down at Andy, who still sat quietly at his side, and felt a renewed sense of gratitude for the little beagle's presence. Keanu's voice was low but sincere. "Is there anything I can do?" Max managed a sad smile. "You're here. You're listening. That's more than most people do. You're a good man, Keanu." They sat there in the dim light of the subway station, the silence between them thick with unspoken emotions. This wasn't just about a stolen dog. It was about how people like Max were forced to live, at the mercy of the worst kinds of people, with no one to turn to. After a moment, Max's gaze drifted to Andy, who had been patiently sitting through the whole conversation. For the first time that night, something flickered in his expression, interest, maybe even the faintest glimmer of joy. "Is this your puppy?" Max asked, his voice softer. Keanu looked down at Andy, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Not exactly. He's a temporary companion for a film role. He actually belongs to a dog trainer." Max nodded, reaching out to gently pat Andy's head. The beagle responded with a happy tail wag, leaning into Max's touch. "He's got a sweet nature," Max murmured, his voice tinged with something wistful. "You can tell a lot about a dog in just a few moments. This one's got a good heart." Keanu watched the way Max interacted with Andy, seeing a glimpse of the man he had been before this tragedy. It was a reminder of how powerful the bond between a person and their dog could be. How cruel it was that Max had lost his. As Keanu prepared to continue his journey to Platform 1, Max's expression shifted. The brief moment of lightness disappeared, replaced by something darker, concern. His voice was low, urgent. "Keanu, be careful. especially at this hour. This station, it's not safe. Keanu met his gaze, taking the warning seriously. I appreciate the heads up, Max. I'll keep my eyes open. Max hesitated, then added something that stuck with Keanu long after. You know, you're the only person who's spoken to me today. Keanu nodded, feeling the weight of those words. Then he turned, Andy trotting beside him, stepping deeper into the underground, completely unaware that his own night was about to take a turn he never saw coming. What happened next? You're gonna want to stick around for this. Max offered a weak smile, his voice barely above a whisper. It helped, even if just a little. Thank you for that. Keanu felt a pang in his chest. A stark reminder of the loneliness and isolation that came with life on the streets. I'll be back tomorrow, Max. Take care of yourself, okay? Max nodded, but his eyes darted around anxiously. You too, Keanu. And remember what I said, be watchful. Keanu gave him a final nod before heading towards Platform 1, Andy trotting faithfully by his side. The station seemed eerily quiet now, their footsteps echoing against the tiled walls. At a nearby booth, Keanu bought a coffee, not because he wanted it, but out of habit. He settled onto one of the benches, the cup warming his hands, the bitter liquid doing little to soothe the unease creeping into his gut. Quite a night, huh, buddy? Keanu murmured to Andy, the pup tilting his head as if listening. Then, the silence shattered. The sharp scrape of heavy boots against concrete sent a ripple of unease through Keanu. He looked up. 3 men. Moving with slow, deliberate strides. Their swagger and demeanor set off immediate alarm bells. Max's warning flashed through Keanu's mind. The men zeroed in on him. Drunk. Dangerous. 2 of them carried baseball bats, twirling them idly, but the way they moved made it clear these weren't just props. The tallest of the 3 sneered. Well, looks like we got ourselves a new hobo in town. Keanu stayed calm, his voice steady. I'm just waiting for my train. The thug laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the empty platform. Oh, we've heard that one before. Who do you think you are? Some kind of celebrity? The stocky one, shorter but built like a tank, smirked. No celebrity dresses like that. Stop playing games, man. Pay up. Keanu's mind raced. These had to be the same thugs Max warned him about. He tried again. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not homeless. I'm just. We don't care what you are. The tall one stepped forward, invading Keanu's space. Look at us. I'm Bowie. That's Will. And him? Connie. This is our territory. And you pay for the privilege of being here. Keanu felt a mix of emotions. Anger at the injustice. Concern for Andy's safety. And a sharp realization this situation was escalating fast. He had 3 choices. Fight. Flee. Or try to reason with men who didn't seem interested in reason. The platform, just minutes ago a quiet waiting area, had turned into something else entirely. Keanu took a slow breath. I'm telling you, I'm not homeless. His voice was calm, but firm. I'm just waiting for my train. Will sneered. Yeah? Then empty your pockets, tough guy. Keanu's jaw tightened. Slowly, he reached into his pocket, keeping his movements deliberate. He pulled out his worn leather wallet and held it out. Will snatched it, rifling through it with a scowl. $20? That's it? Disgusted, he tossed the wallet back at Keanu. Keanu caught it instinctively, just as the bald thug's eyes locked onto something else. Well, what do we have here? Before Keanu could react, the thug lunged, grabbing at his neck. For a split second, Keanu thought he was going to be strangled, but then, a sharp yank. His necklace. A delicate chain, a family heirloom. It snapped. Keanu barely had time to process before he saw it, dangling from the thug's grimy fingers. A rush of cold anger flooded his veins. "Hey, that belongs to my family." His voice was different now. Not calm. Not patient. This was personal. The thug, Will, grinned, holding the necklace up mockingly. "Oh, I think it has plenty of value to us." Keanu clenched his fists. "Please. It has no value to you, but it means everything to me." Will's smirk widened. "What's the matter? Your family all dead or something? That why you're down here all alone? Looking like this, with a puppy?" The words weren't true, but the cruelty behind them burned. Something in Keanu snapped. Without thinking, he stood up and grabbed for the necklace. Will's grip tightened. The two were locked in a silent battle, a war of sheer willpower. Then, a shove. Connie, the stocky one, slammed into Keanu's chest, sending him stumbling backward. As Keanu regained his footing, he found himself face to face with a baseball bat. Connie held it like a promise. "Make another move, and you'll regret it." Andy let out a low, warning growl. Keanu's mind raced. The situation had gone from bad to worse. And these thugs? They weren't done yet. What happened next? You won't believe how this night ends. Stay tuned. Bowie's eyes flicked to Andy, and his sneer twisted into something worse. A malicious grin. Keanu barely had time to process it before Bowie did the unthinkable. He spat on the puppy. Then, he kicked over Keanu's coffee. The warm liquid splashed over Keanu's jeans, dripping onto Andy's fur. The beagle yelped in shock, shaking his tiny body. And just like that, something inside Keanu snapped. He lunged forward, his only thought to shield Andy from whatever was coming next. But before he could, Andy, frightened, agitated, broke free. The beagle's leash slipped through Keanu's fingers as Andy sprang forward, barking furiously, chasing after the retreating thugs. "Andy, Keanu's heart slammed against his ribs as he lunged, his fingers finally closing around the end of the leash. But his relief was short-lived. Because when he looked up, he was surrounded. The thugs had circled back. And Andy? He had latched onto Bowie's boot, tiny teeth sinking in with fearless determination. Bowie snarled, shaking his foot violently. "Looks like your mutt needs to be taught a lesson." Will reached for Andy's leash. Keanu tightened his grip. "Don't touch him." But he was outnumbered, outmaneuvered. With a sharp yank, the leash was wrenched from Keanu's grasp. Andy let out a startled yelp as Bowie lifted him off the ground, his little legs kicking helplessly in the air. "Stop. Please." Keanu's composure shattered. "He's not even my dog, he belongs to a trainer for work. You can't." His desperate plea was cut off as Connie raised his baseball bat, the heavy wood hovering inches from Keanu's face. "I've cracked plenty of homeless skulls with this," Connie growled. "Don't think I won't do the same to you." Keanu's hands clenched into fists. Then, the sound that made his stomach drop. The sharp snap of a belt being pulled tight. He watched in horror as the thug strapped Andy's mouth shut. A chilling echo of what had happened to Button. The puppy whimpered, eyes wide with fear. And Keanu knew. These men had no intention of letting Andy go. They were going to hurt him. Keanu moved. A last, desperate attempt to intervene. The bat swung. Stopped, inches from his face. A silent warning. Will sneered. "Consider this payment for your stay in our territory." Then, they were gone. Fading into the darkness of the subway station, taking Andy with them. Keanu stood frozen. His necklace was gone. Andy was gone. And with them, a piece of his faith in humanity. The puppy's muffled whimpers echoed in his ears, a haunting reminder of his failure to protect him. As the adrenaline drained, the full weight of what had just happened hit Keanu like a freight train. The cruelty, the injustice, the helplessness. Then, something else. Rage. Keanu made a vow. This wouldn't stand. Somehow, someway, he would find Andy. He turned. Ignored the approaching train. Ignored the few late-night passengers who had seen the tail end of the confrontation but had no idea who he really was. All that mattered was one thing. Finding Andy. Keanu's heart pounded as he raced through the station, scanning frantically. The sound of an incoming train barely registered. He had to find them before it was too late. Max's words about Button rang in his mind. He couldn't let Andy suffer the same fate. The subway tunnels stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of platforms and corridors. Then, movement. A glimpse of the thugs splitting up, each taking a different route. A practiced escape strategy. Keanu hesitated for only a second, then chose a path. He ran. Dodging passengers, shoving past commuters, ignoring their startled protests. But the delay cost him. By the time he reached where he had last seen them, they were gone. Swallowed by the underground. Keanu spun around, frantic, desperate. Nothing. They had vanished. The realization hit him like a gut punch. He had lost them. Andy was gone. Keanu's breath came in ragged gasps as he tried to regain control, to figure out his next move. Then, he spotted them. 2 police officers. Hope flared. They could help. Keanu strode toward them, his voice urgent. Officers, I need to report a robbery and a kidnapping. The officers turned, taking in his disheveled appearance. The coffee stains. The dirt. The exhaustion in his eyes. And just like that, Keanu saw their expressions shift. Professional interest turned into thinly veiled disgust. One officer sighed. Look, buddy. Buddy. The word stung almost as much as Will's insults. They thought he was homeless. Just another problem to ignore. The officer waved a dismissive hand. We don't have time for this. Why don't you move along? Keanu blinked. For the first time in years, he felt invisible. But if they wouldn't help, he would do it himself. Because one way or another, he was getting Andy back. And these thugs? They were about to realize they messed with the wrong guy. Stay tuned. Because this story is far from over, you don't understand, Keanu insisted, his voice firm but controlled. These men, they stole my necklace. They took a dog. We need to find them before. The second officer cut him off, his voice sharp and dismissive. Listen, we don't help people like you. Go sleep it off somewhere else. For a moment, Keanu was speechless. The blatant prejudice in their tone, the way they looked at him, judged him based on nothing more than appearance, it was infuriating. He was about to push back, to argue, when a voice rang out behind him. Oh my God. Is that Keanu Reeves? Keanu turned as a young woman approached, phone already in hand, camera rolling. And just like that, everything changed. The officer's expressions shifted from disdain to shock, then, almost comically, to forced politeness. Mr. Reeves, the first officer stammered, his tone suddenly dripping with false concern. We had no idea. How can we assist you? The fan, realizing something serious was happening, continued recording. The officers noticed. The embarrassment in their eyes was unmistakable. Keanu felt a storm of emotions. Anger at their hypocrisy. Frustration at the wasted time. And a grim satisfaction at watching their discomfort. But above all, urgency. Every second counted. Andy was still out there. The officers, now desperate to save face, asked Keanu which direction the thugs had gone. But Keanu already knew the truth. It was too late. The thugs were long gone. Keanu took a slow breath, leveling his gaze at them. "You know," he said, his voice calm, but razor sharp, "when I first approached you, I was just another person in need. Your job is to protect and serve everyone, not just the people you decide are worthy." The officers shifted uncomfortably, shame creeping into their expressions. "What if I had been seriously injured?" Keanu continued. "What if every second counted? You would never have known, because you judged me based on how I looked." The weight of his words hung in the air. The officers, thoroughly chastened, scrambled to make amends. They promised to alert their colleagues, to keep an eye out for the thugs and the dog. Keanu provided them with descriptions, but his disgust at their earlier behavior was obvious. As he walked away, leaving them standing in awkward silence, a new realization settled in his chest. How many others had been ignored like this? Max. The people in the subway alcove. Everyone's society refused to see. And Andy, a helpless dog, taken by cruel hands. Keanu's resolve hardened. He wasn't going home. Not yet. But now what? Keanu stood on the platform, exhaustion settling into his bones. Trains came. Trains went. The weight of the night pressed down on him. Every minute Andy was out there alone made the pit in his stomach grow deeper. He was at a crossroads. Keep searching? A seemingly impossible task. Or board the next train home, regroup, and try again with fresh eyes in the morning. The practical side of him urged him to leave. He would need to go to the police station, file a formal report, explain what happened to the director, the animal trainer. The consequences loomed large. Not just for the production, but for Andy. Would he ever see him again? Another train pulled into the station. Keanu took a step toward it, his decision made. And then, a voice. Breathless. Urgent. Cutting through the noise. Keanu. Keanu, wait. Keanu turned. Max. The homeless man he'd left behind not long ago, running toward him, face flushed, eyes blazing with urgency. Keanu's heart leapt. Max? What's going on? Max reached him, bent over, gasping for breath. Between pants, he managed to say, "You're looking for the thugs, right? I know where they are." Keanu's stomach tightened. What? How do you know? Max straightened up, determination burning in his gaze. Word travels fast in our community. He gestured around them. A few of the others saw what happened. They told me. I knew I had to find you. Keanu's pulse pounded. Max had come through. The train doors shut behind him. The opportunity to leave was gone. Not that he noticed. Because nothing mattered more than Andy. He turned to Max, hope surging in his chest. Do you know where Andy is? Max knew where the thugs usually gathered, and if they hurried, they might catch them before it was too late. Without hesitation, Keanu followed him, moving quickly through the station. As they neared the alcove, Max explained that these criminals were creatures of habit. They always returned to the same spot to count their takings and plan their next moves. Slowing their pace, Keanu and Max approached cautiously. The thugs were there, huddled in conversation, but Andy was nowhere in sight. Keanu's fists clenched, anger rising, but Max placed a hand on his arm. Careful. We need a plan. Keanu took a deep breath, forcing himself to think. Charging in wouldn't help, they were outnumbered and outmatched. But as they strategized in the shadows, something unexpected happened. People began to emerge. From the makeshift shelters around them, a community of homeless individuals gathered, forming a silent but powerful presence. Their numbers grew, and suddenly, the thugs were the ones outnumbered. An older man stepped forward, voice strong. Keanu helps us every night. Now we stand for him. The thugs' bravado faltered. Their sneers wavered. One of them even stammered, "Wait, that's Keanu Reeves?" The power dynamic shifted. For the first time, they weren't in control. Keanu stepped forward. "Give back my necklace. And tell us where the dogs are." For a moment, it seemed they might comply. But then, in a last desperate attempt to escape, they lashed out, a mistake. The community that had been silent victims for so long fought back. The thugs were quickly overpowered, their weapons stripped away as police sirens echoed through the station. The officers arrived, securing the criminals. Keanu pointed at his necklace, still hanging around Bowie's neck. An officer carefully removed it, logging it as evidence. "Where are the dogs?" Keanu demanded. Bowie smirked. "You'll never find them." But a phone confiscated from one of the thugs told a different story. Incriminating messages revealed that Andy and Button had been sold to a shady pet store. A chill ran through Keanu. Time was running out. The officers wasted no time. A judge approved an emergency warrant, and soon they were en route to Pet Haven. When they arrived, the store was dark, a closed sign hanging in the window. But inside, a light flickered. Someone was there. "NYPD. Open up." A nervous man answered, trying to deny everything, but as officers combed through the shop, the truth became undeniable. Finally, the cages were opened. Andy bolted toward Keanu, his tail wagging furiously as he leaped into his arms. Relief flooded through him. Nearby, Max fell to his knees, cradling Button, tears streaking down his face. They had won. As the officers finished their investigation, one turned to Keanu. "You're free to go, Mr. Reeves. We'll need your statement tomorrow, but for now, take them home." Outside, the city lights glowed against the quiet streets. Keanu and Max walked side by side, their dogs trotting happily beside them. Keanu broke the silence. "Max, I want to help. There are programs, shelters, job training. I can connect you with the right people." Max hesitated. "I've tried before. No one gives people like me a chance." Keanu met his gaze. "I do." Stopping at a convenience store, Keanu returned with a prepaid phone. "My assistant will call tomorrow." "Answer it." Max stared at it, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say." Keanu smiled. "Just promise me you'll pick up." At the subway entrance, they paused. This was where their paths split. Max held Button close. "Thank you, Keanu. For everything." As Keanu stepped onto the train with Andy, he turned back, making a phone gesture. Max smiled, holding up the phone in acknowledgement. The doors closed. The train moved. Andy curled up at Keanu's feet, looking up at him as if to say, "We did good tonight." Keanu exhaled, feeling something new, a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about one night. It was about something much bigger. And for Keanu Reeves, this was just the beginning.